Next project, let's make a little planter vessel kind of thing. Like I said, this is just an example, little adorable teapot, but you're going to be making a vessel that ideally would house a small plant, if you like, and some sort of a catch tray. Going to have some features built around as far as having some drainage holes, that sort. But predominantly, this is going to be using the Revolve tool, whereas before we used the Extrude tool, which took your sketch, go straight up. Now we're going to be using a sketch on the XY or XZ axis, so like it's right in front of you, and we're going to take that sketch and revolve it around. So what does that actually mean? Let me show you. Hop over to Fusion. I got a couple of examples. So essentially, and this is using the appearance tool here. I'll shift back to auto color here. So as example references, one of the main things is it must be on two separate components. I'll show you how to do that, a couple different methods. But each component has its own bodies and sketches. The sketch creates the body. You're using the second tool over, the Revolve tool. As you mouse over it, it says takes a sketch or profile and a planar face, whatever, and revolves that sketch around an axis. That doesn't mean it has to be an exact closed thing, but in this case, yes, it does. So basically, can also be called the lathe tool, that sort of thing. You're taking a profile, like a cross section of your object. So you're drawing with a sketch a cross section and taking that and turning it around in 360. In this case, you could do less. That's pretty much it. So how do you go about all this stuff? Well, let me back up in time. Snapping back, I started by creating multiple components. I'll show you how to do that. I like to start with components if I know I'm going to be doing that. You can always add, or you can always divvy up objects and such, your bodies and such, into components separately. Start with a sketch. I like to create basically a reference size box, a bounding box. I said it needs to be 120 millimeters max by 100 meters wide, 100 millimeters. That's suddenly giant. This box is 120 millimeters tall by 50 millimeters wide because I'm only making. From that, creating a sketch. Might have these sketches hidden. Yep, there we go. So I'm just making a profile. Simply that. We're going to be using the offset tool, probably, that sort. From there, using the revolve tool, bam, instantly rotates that sketch around, and you create a shape, a rounded shape. How you go about it, more or less up to you, so long as it's a sketch and using the revolve tool. Now, I made some additional features, fillets, just changing stuff around, added some features on the bottom, adjusting the profile here, adding more and more. Inside, I started creating sketches of where I want to make drainage holes. And what I did is making one, extrude through to cut. And instead of making multiple sketches, extruding everything, and just making more work for myself, I make one sketch, one hole through, add anything I want, like the features of a fillet there, and then I repeat that completed thing using the pattern tool and make multiple holes. So I don't have to keep repeating each one all around and all that such. I can complete one whole thing, make it all the features I want, and then just use the pattern tool to repeat all the completed things. Make it easier on yourself. From there, I also added some additional stuffs. This one I used a construction plane and added some more features. I'll show you how to do that in a bit. But in this case, I cut some holes in the bottom as well, because technically if this drained into the bottom, it was a closed foot, so water would just collect at the bottom. And I just repeated that to make additional arches throughout. From there, I also made a tray, exact same process, just a cash tray. There you go. So that would be the simple version. I also added some complex features by that additional sketch floating out in space. I used extrude to cut through, made one hole. Looks like a kitty cat for some reason. Kind of, sort of. And use the pattern tool, circle pattern tool, to, instead of making additional features on a flat plane around a circle, made holes to the side using the same tool on a vertical surface, and apparently make it a very holy plate. So there you go. Pretty simple. Slightly more complex version, doing the same thing. I used same sort of ideas to make the holes in the sides. This one, let me hide one of the components. I used partial revolve, so just by a little bit, to make one foot, and use fillet to make this blending feature, and then use circle pattern tool to make a whole bunch of these same little feet. So you can make a cauldron, something like that. More power to you. If you're doing, like I said, the advanced feature or option would be making additional holes, that sort of thing. I grow orchids. I made up more of a pot that has a lot more ventilation, so it'd be better for orchids. There you go. Can print them out that way. Same deal. Tray. Using the emboss tool, which the difference between extrude and emboss, extrude goes straight forward as a rectangular brick. Emboss copies the curvature of a shape so that the actual internals, or if it was embossed outward, I'll go back and edit this feature. I think I just confused the computer. There we go. Oh, that was for the wrong one. That was for a different D1. Whoops. That emboss. If it's internal, it's technically debossing. Come on, robot. Catch up. There we go. So if I change this to emboss, which is just positive, otherwise it functions basically as far as inputs, same way as extrude. Hit OK. As it catches up, apparently. So you can see, let me get, oh, come on. You can see that emboss copies the curvature of the shape. That's all. So that's a variation. Make it a little more complex. So there you go. You're making a tray, you're making a bowl, you're making some sort of form that will hold stuff and with holes in it. All right, let's get started on how to do this stuff. First things first, new project, save, example, in class, Revolve. Great, that probably wasn't even spelled right. All right, so like I said, I like to start by making multiple components to begin with. The reason we're making multiple components is so it's a completely separate elements, which will come into play later on in the semester. But to make components, technically this, your starting point and the previous project, that was all under one single component. But I want multiple components. To do that, I'm going to mouse over to the top bar, over assembly, where it says new component. In this case, brings up, relabel, let's say vessel. Now, one thing you want to do to not get confused on, deselect the checkbox that says activate. Because if I don't, if I hit OK, what happens is it automatically activates that component. What that is if you mouse over the top bar, there's this little circle that's hollow or empty. Select that. That activates your entire project. But this is a way to isolate elements from one another by component. So if I accidentally activated that one, left it as that, and then I went to create another component, say component 2, it creates that new component nested within the thing. So it's an easy way to accidentally get really lost within your own project. So let me Control Z and create a new component. And I don't, or oops, deactivate, or rather activate the entire project before you do this. New component, and we'll label this tray. There you go. Deselect the activate, and now it just leaves it out there. The difference being, it's not nested inside. If you look at the top bar of your project, this little symbol, it has changed from a single cube to a stack of cubes. That's just denoting that there's multiple components within that component. It's a way to nest more components. So if you make something much more complex, say like a robot arm, you would put like the entire grabber in one component, but all of the, or like each arm segment, all that in its own component. But you'd put the entire arm in its own component so that one component houses multiple things as a way to isolate elements. That's all. Going to keep repeating the word component. So ultimately, each component can house its own sketches, objects, tools, that sort. So there you go. Way to keep things separate. So now I'm going to activate the vessel. Okay. Start a new sketch. And in this case, I want to work straight in front of me so that instead of on the flat plane, the XY, I want the XZ straight in front of me. Snaps around. There we go. I like making this as a bounding box just to give myself a reference. You don't have to do this. I like doing this. Starting from a 2-point rectangle, drawing outward. Like I said, max dimensions for this, about 120 or so by 100. So meaning if I'm only making half of a profile, half the sketch. So make that 50 millimeters. The other one, I said like 120. There you go. I want to make this, double click this as a construction line because I just want this as a reference. All right, done. Finish sketch. You don't have to do that. I like having that as a reference, and I will label it as such. If I spell it right. There we go. You can make your own sketch entirely, or you can draw this all in the same. Doesn't matter. I'm going to start a new sketch. There we go. That's just, like I said, a way for me to keep things separate. You do not have to do it this way. All right. I'm going to use a fit point spline to just draw a kind of sort of shape to make a bowl. Doesn't have to be straight up and down, but could be basically whatever you want. You want to make it like a terracotta pot. There you go. You want to make it a fancy vase or amphora. More power to you. If you grow a plant in there, you have to smash it to get the root ball out. So that's the only difference. All right. Doesn't matter where you start. Doesn't matter where you stop aside from some kind of an end. So I'm going to start right in the center. Main thing is you don't want to cross the center line. If you do, it's fine. We'll trim it off. But if that's the case, let me start at the top and just kind of doodle. Remember, you can change the details as you like. Now, if I went too far, I'll show you what happens in a moment. Hit OK there. No. I'm going to add feet to this. Remember, you can add more points. You can drag this all around. Make a big old potbelly vessel. Whatever. Kind of sort of roundish. There you go. If it's outside of the box a little bit, that's okay. Like I said, I just add that line there for myself as a reference, so I know if I've got it kind of taking it too far. That's all. Okay. That's pretty much it. It's not, but that's pretty much it. What I'm going to do is I need a wall. I need a cross section. I need half of this because looking at these vessels, like I showed you the sketch, but essentially what I need for any of this, and I'll show you just a reference here. It's called section analysis. All it is a way to see half of a work. So I just need that profile, but I don't even need the whole thing. I just need one side of it. Okay, whatever. By the way, section analysis doesn't alter the project at all. You're just changing its visibility. So with that, let's just make it simple. Use an offset line. Go in. I said, like, use a wall thickness of like 3 to 5 millimeters. 5 is a really thick wall. 3 is pretty reasonable. So we'll use 3. I want it to go internal, so negative. There you go. Okay, so I should need to close these sketches up because right now I just have 2 floating lines. You could do just a straight line. Connect. There you go. That closes it. We can always add fillets, stuff like that later. Fillets right now get kind of awkward because it is a curved line, but if you add fillets to the sketch, that's fine. You can add these separately, or if you want these both to be the same radius, the same curve, do not hit enter yet. Keep selecting, and those will be the same. So now, if I use a slider, changes this super friggin' wonky. So this is why I say I would not recommend using the fillet right now. You can do that later. So let's just Control Z that and make it flat. If you do want to make this round right now, I would recommend actually using, instead of a straight line, use a 2-point circle. Same deal, starting 1 point, starting 2 points. Now I just made it slightly larger, but I've made it a rounded end. Same deal. All right, so for reference, I'll just do a straight line at the back here. I get in there, lock it in, there. My profile is now light blue. That shows it's a closed sketch. Remember, if it's not closed, you can't use it to extrude, or in this case, revolve. So for right now, let's just say, okay, finish sketch. Next part, use the revolve tool. Select your profile. Next step, select axis, and if you drew it straight across straight on as a flat line, just use the Z axis. Now, currently this dotted line is off the Z axis, so same deal. There you go. And new body, all that. Now, the problem is I'm getting an error message. It just went away because it's underneath the all the details here. Where's my error message? It's not showing up. All right. The reason I'm getting an error message that now is not showing up is because I made this line past here. So it's essentially crossing and clipping into itself. That's what the problem is. There you go. But I also made sure I also forgot to select that. There we go. My error came back up. So error is because it is crossing the axis. All I need to do for that, let's hit cancel and just trim this off. If you took this too far, that's fine, or you can always just re-edit the sketch. There we go. Let's just say, let's drag this back over there. And if you need, there you go. Or if it was too far, that's all right too. Let's just use trim. Trim those sections up. Oh, I didn't have a trim line, so it just deleted everything. So don't do that. If you're unsure of where your line is and all that such, I would say delete that line, move your actual sketch line to the center point. There we are. Draw your connecting line straight up. Doesn't matter if it's too far, we can trim that off. If this doesn't connect, that's okay. Go to modify and use the extend tool. That just exactly that extends to where the next line. Close it up. You're all set. You don't even need to trim that off. You can if you want, but it's irrelevant because we just need this profile. There we go. All right. Do the same again. Revolve, selecting all the things. Make sure I select my little floaty circly bits. Now, when I go to, oh, I accidentally hit extrude. Revolve, there we go, the correct thing. That helps. Select my axis, which is the center. There you go. Instant pot, instant vessel. Now, obviously, I just made like a super teeter-totter form here, so I would recommend adding in some sort of a foot or so into this. You could do that on the same sketch. You can add it afterwards, and then just join them together. Hit OK, that's fine. I could always go back, edit sketch. Yeah, let's make kind of a little foot on this. So something, I don't know. Let's make a straight line. Intersecting. Doesn't matter if it goes too far. That's okay. There we go. I can always trim this stuff off later or do it now, which means I would like this to be flat. Sure. Let's just draw it from the center straight out a line. Now that obviously is going to close that up, but I'm just using that line to trim some chunks away. Of course, the other thing would have been just adjust that profile up there so it actually was above. So whatever, same diff, same result. There you go. Now I just need to go back and edit my revolve so that it also has that sketch part. There we go. Still one body. We're all set. Now, if I orbit under, you can see that it's made a big recess here. So you might want to make that solid. It's up to you. It's not really a problem. It's still printable. No problem. What I did before to make that adjustment, because like I said, if you're printing something, hard angles make kind of an odd weak point and can slow stuff down. I would just make a fillet there. That corner, I don't know, drag it out until you like it. Makes for a nicer transition, that's all. If you want, you can add one to the inside, either hit OK, or before you do, you can add multiple fillets, multiple different fillets into the same tool. So if you're trying to keep everything compressed, no problem. If you're trying to keep things a little bit more simplified, but more spots in your timeline, same deal. But to add more, just go to the plus sign. I'm going to select the inside down, and I'm going to drag that down too. There we go. Just makes it fancier. All right, that'll work. I like that. That's not bad. Okay, so let me save for a moment. Revolve. Okay, now I need to make drain holes in this. To do that, I want to make some holes in the bottom. Start a new sketch. You can start directly on the base if you want, or just using the actual plane. They're the same thing in this case. There we are. Now, I want to make holes, in this case again, in a pattern around. You can make circle holes, that sort. I do not recommend using the hole tool. That is technically what it's for, but I want more precision than that. So I'm going to use a sketch and extrude and then repeat that using the pattern tool. So in this case, decide where you want that, just using a center point circle, or if you want to intentionally make this in like a circle or something like that, I'm going to start a circle in the center. Whoop, what happened there? It selected the wrong plane. Am I stuck on that? No. All right, there we go. So I'm just selecting the very center, and I'm just drawing outward where I think would be best for drain holes. Something there-ish. Sure. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I want to turn that into a construction line. So I make that circle, hit X, or select circle from there. Now it's a dotted line. That's just my reference point. Obviously, yes, I could have just used the other lines that are present on this vessel as my reference, but there we go. However big you think it seems reasonable, I'd say like 5 or 6 millimeters. That's probably a good hole size. That's about a 1/4 inch. Smaller, it's just going to get gummed up. Larger, all your soil is going to dump out of it. So I don't know. Sure, 6 millimeters. Great. There we go. Okay. Now I said you can make multiples using the pattern tool, but I want to do less work. So instead of making multiple sketches and extrude everything, and I don't know, realistically, it's like one extra step. But for the sake of explanation, finish sketch, and I'm just going to use extrude now for that sketch, and I'm going to cut upward through. It automatically changes to cut. That's why it's red. All set. Hit OK. It's made my cut in there. I would like to curve those edges so they're not just sharp edges. We use fillet. You can select either the edges themselves, or because it's the two edges are shared by this face, select just the face. It'll do it for all of it. Hit 1 millimeter. Yeah, that's pretty good. Just curves the edges. If you want less, there you go, 0.5, slightly less. There you go. Same deal. Now that I've already done the work for it, just one hole there, now I'll use the pattern tool to repeat the entire completed feature. Mousing over the pattern tool. There we go. Now, right now the default is by bodies because I'm not inside a sketch or anything like that. I'm going to drop down, and you can either select faces or try features. It won't always work depending on the complexity of your features. Feature means it's multiple elements. So let's try selecting that. If I mouse over, sometimes it's hard to grab. See, it grabbed the fillet at the top and bottom, but not the cylinder in between. So grab that as well. Okay. Objects, 2 of those, the 2 features. My axis, if your lines disappear or it's hard to see, what it might be is your origin. Unhide the origin and it'll show up again. Those are just the center axes and planes. I want the z-axis. Or if it's really hard to find, hard to see, hard to grab, just hide everything for a second. There you go. It's going to create these automatically in multiples. It's automatically going to be in 3. You add however many you want. 3, 25. That's a little excessive. Maybe somewhere in between. I don't know, 7. Odd numbers always feel better. You don't have to do complete. You could, of course, do partial or symmetric, which just means you are making all of them partially around, that sort. It's up to you. But in this case, obviously, we're just going to do full, evenly distributed, all set. Okay. So that's kind of it. It's a vessel. It's kind of basic, kind of straightforward, but it has holes in the bottom. There we go. All right, save. Vessel done? Don't know. We'll see. Now I need a tray. Same process, but we're going to do this on a different component. So the reason I have these different components, like I said, keep these things separate. So everything is now isolated for the pot, for the vessel, on the vessel component. What I'm going to do is mouse down to my tray component and activate that. The first one kind of ghosts out because you don't need to bother with that at the moment, but it is still manipulatable. It is still selectable. That's okay. If you want it, if that's just bothering you entirely, hide it entirely. That way it won't be a bother. But now this is active. I need to create a sketch to create the revolve for my tray. Same deal. selecting the XZ axis. Sometimes even though it's not active, that component, having the bodies visible makes it difficult to select the plane. So that's why I say you want to toggle the visibility on that. So there we go. But I like having it visible so I know where it is. These do not have to touch. These do not have to touch to print. Most certainly you don't want them touching, but they don't have to touch when you're modeling them. It might help make more sense, but they don't technically have to. All right, so from here, I'm going to just start with a straight line out because I want this to be a flat bottom. Start from there. All right, there we go. And from here, I want it curved. So switch to a fit point spline and up, up, and up, and up. You don't have to go like crazy high with this, but I'd recommend making it tall enough to where, water wouldn't immediately spill out if you poured water into this. And there we go. You can adjust those. It's all set. Once again, use the offset tool. And yeah, again, 3 millimeters works. In this case, I want negative because it's going the opposite direction. There you go. Same deal. I need to close the sketch. Just straight line. Sometimes it's hard to lock in. There we go. And for over here, I'm going to do the same of creating a circle, 2-point circle. Boop. There we are. Now, just for the sake of adding stuff, I think it's kind of boring. It's just kind of round. I want to make it more. I'm going to use another circle to make that circle bigger. But the reason I'm using a second one, now I have a center point there. I could have just used a straight line too. It's fine. But make it slightly bigger, or again, use the offset line. Now it's 1 millimeter wider. There you go. That's all. Finish sketch. Yes, you can trim all this stuff out, but if I'm not really sure how I want that to work yet, no bother. From there, revolve. Select all the things. Select your axis, which is your Z axis there. Boop. Tray. So that's pretty much it. Now, we're going to add more stuff to this, obviously, but reactivate the whole project. Now everything is visible and there. So let's save. Tray component done. All right. I need to get a drink of water real quick. Okay, so that's pretty much what we're going with this. That's the basic level. Now, let's go over a couple of quick things here. Something like, what if you accidentally made everything on the same component? Like you made everything and never made new components to begin with. That's okay. You can just drag and drop onto new components. So let's say like with Vessel here, I'm just going to duplicate the tray real quick. Make sure that the sketches are visible so I can actually use the thing. There we go. So right now I have, excuse me. I'll tell you what, we'll just have it on instead of within the vessel, whole thing. Not even within any components already. But I've got that profile visible. And let me hide the body so we can see what I'm doing here. So, all right. Revolve, same deal. Axis, there we go. Same deal, making another one. Okay, super duper. Join? No, I want new body. Now, of course, that said, you could make this immediately kick out a new component as one of the options, as one of the drop-down options in Revolve. Same with extrude or combine, any of that kind of stuff. But let's stick with new body. All right, so made this new body component, and this is currently not in either of the components. Maybe you didn't even make one to begin with. That's okay. Go in, create your new component. All right. Leave it as a component tree. Component 3. That. It's not currently active. That's all right. Hit OK. Started a new one. All right. So you can drag and drop things into other components after the fact. So right now, I think my program just froze. There we are. So I just need to go in, select the correct body, and I'm just going to drag and drop that body, hover it over the new component, plops it in there. There you go. Now again, I'm in auto color mode, so that's why it's like orange and yellow and such like that. That's all. So there you go. Just drag and drop stuff. Or you can have it kick out during the actual revolve. So I recommend the drag and drop method. That works best. All right. So let's hide that for now. Bring my other stuff back up. All right. Okay, so we got that. We got our basic vessel. We need some other stuff on this. So like I said, you have some other options. One, if this, as far as design wise, this is water would just get trapped into there. So you got a couple of options, different stuff you could do. Something like, I want to start a new component. I want to make just some cutaway arches or something like that. So I'm currently working just on the profile. There we go. No problem. I'm going to make an ellipse right in the center and just draw outward. Sure, 14 by 6. Okay, whatever. So that's just the same thing going straight out. Finish sketch. So I'm going to extrude that outward. Problem with doing that is that slices through everything. So you got a couple of options here. I just wanted to cut through just this side profile wall. So I could do something like, instead of starting at the profile plane, I could start at an offset. So that means, I don't know, start it somewhere outside, 60 millimeters. And going back, let's drag it outward. Oops, can't select it. There we go. So when I actually started, instead of starting at the profile plane, my extrude is starting way back there. So now I can just drag it straight in, and it acts as a cut. Really cool way of using the offsets and such like that, the starting and extent types. So really really convenient. All I did was change the starting point. Instead of from profile plane where it's drawn, I just said offset and put a number in that was outside of my model. And it's going to cut through. Great. So I just made this little notch. That's all. That's just basically, oops, basically all it takes. Making that little notch there. You could, of course, add fillets and such like that, or chamfers, whatever you please. Now, of course, because of this profile here, that's going to mess everything up. So instead, just for now, I'm just going to put a small fillet on that, just that outer edge, and curve that. There you go. I could correct this inner issue by going back and altering that fillet and making it slightly smaller. That's all. So sometimes you have to kind of jump around in your project a little bit, but I'm just going to ignore it for now. There we go. Now I can use the circle pattern again. Select those features. I want those. My axis, the Z axis. 7 is like a lot. So let's just say like 3. That seems more reasonable. Okay. And there we are. So now it has just little arches in the bottom. That's all. So you can create little feeties, whatever you want, that sort of thing. All right. The other thing I wanted to show y'all, so is for more advanced option, you're welcome to do something like this, or if you if you are feeling a little more ambitious or you have some experience, you're going to be using the either cut, meaning the extrude and cut, or emboss tool. Now, to make this more effective, it is easier to make a sketch floating outside of your project. Basically, what I just did with that extrude, starting offset, it's a lot easier to not have it right in the center of your project. So to do that, I'm going to use what's called an offset plane, construction plane. All this is literally just your planes here, and instead of being right in the middle, it moves it somewhere else in your project. So in this case, make a construction plane based off of the XZ axis and just drag it forward somewhere, just so it's floating out in front. That's all. Okay. From here, I can create a sketch. Oh, hang on. I want to make sure to activate the right component. Working on the vessel. I should have had that construction plane on there, but there we go. So as you see, my virtual plane is just floating out in front of my vessel. That's all. All right. So working there, you can add text, you can doodle, however you like. In this case, let's make a bunch of holes. So I'm going to start with one, just one circle. There you go. I don't know. Let's make it 15 millimeters. Just picking a number. I can make a whole bunch of these. I want to make a pattern with this. Well, we can make one and make a whole bunch of circle, or make a circle pattern, make a whole bunch of them, do them all by hand, or we can use the rectangle pattern. I want to make multiples. So I'm going to create going up and down. Let's do both. Symmetric. Make them both symmetric. There we are. So I can use a slider to add more or less, and use the other slider to space them. So let's do less. Okay, there we are. Let's space them out a little bit better. Cool. Now, the problem with doing it this way is I'm just making a grid. That's not really a bad thing. So let's just leave it at that. Okay, what is my distance? Let's even these out. 20, distance, I don't know. Let's make that more of an even number. 40, there we go. Now I got an even grid. The reason it's 40 is because it's going in both directions. Okay, cool. So now I have a partial grid. And the reason I'm doing this way is I want these evenly spaced, but I want to be able to make multiples of these. So let's hit OK. Finish sketch. Now, if I used extrude, select all of these, or better yet, let's just select everything. That's not going to let me do it that way. Fine. I use a select all the things selection box. Please and thank you. There we go. If I use extrude, it goes straight through, but it cuts straight through. And that just makes like going through, I want these to curve. So instead of extrude, I'm going to use the emboss tool. Further down, sort of kind of the same thing, but differenty. So again, select all the things. And now, instead of pulling and pushing to get where I want, I can just select the face I want it to go to. So now it makes a curved extrusion, essentially, but which is called an emboss. If you want it to cut inward, select deboss. Automatically cuts inward. Now, of course, if you want this to go all the way through, more. Let's say it's only a 3 millimeter wall, so let's just say negative, I don't know, 10, just so it goes all the way. So it cuts all the way through. But you can see more accurately what's happening, how all of the lines are curving along that vector. You want that because otherwise everything's just going to be straight in a row. Now, realistically, yeah, I could have just made just the one row and just gone along. But this is really excellent if you wanted to make like an offset pattern or anything too. So there we go. So I made a bunch of holes. Hit OK. Thinking about it. This is why it's important to save before you do anything like this. Nah, it just keeps jumping I don't know why it keeps jumping like that. But now that I have these multiples, I can select circle pattern, features. There's not really that many a feature here, but let's try to repeat that. But now, since all that single thing is considered a feature, a singular feature, because I use the emboss tool to create it, rather than a single circle extruded through like it did the holes in the bottom, it treats the whole thing the same way. Again, I'm using a circle pattern, select around the z-axis. Now it makes even distributions around. Now, granted, probably would have been a smarter way to do this, but let's just add some more. That evens out actually pretty evenly. Hit OK. Thinks about it for a minute. Hopefully not too long. Again, definitely save before you start making, when you start making multiples, like higher number multiples, definitely save before you do that. The thing I did not do before doing this. Right. 87%. Come on. Yeah. I'm going to pause the video for a moment. Okay, it worked. Lots of holes. It's like a golf ball. Yeah, reverse golf ball, that sort of thing. Really easy way to make varieties of things. Like I said, the emboss tool works really well now. It did not used to. It was terrible and extremely limiting, but it's good now. All right, so same kind of thing. Let's say on the tray. All right, let's activate the tray. Construction plane already exists because I actually made this construction plane outside of either of the components. I didn't mean to do that, but I did so I could use it for either. New sketch. Unhide that construction plane. It needs to be floating out in front of what you intend to do. And let's see here. Let's do just straight text. Create a text box. Come on. There you go, buddy. And I don't know. I don't know. My brain is fried. Planty. There, Planty McPlanterson. You have your standard stuff like center it and all that kind of thing. I'll have to adjust this text box obviously because that don't fit. Keep stretching it out. Maybe I'll need to go back in and make that slightly smaller font. Yeah, looks like it. I'm just trying to get it on the same line. There we go. And let's make it bold. Great. So again, if I tried to extrude this, it would just not work. It would try to cut that straight across as a rectangle. But if I use the emboss tool, sketch profile, there we go. Faces, the front of my bowl or tray. Oh no, can't do it because of reasons. Let's see why. Might be too close to the edge there. Let's try emboss. Yep, nope, not gonna let me. So if you get those errors, just go in. Let's try editing the sketch. Might just be that I need to move that upwards or something like that. Let's try it now. Again, sometimes this just happens to come into play as an error of just where it currently is positioned. Select the faces. Still doing it. Let's see. Lost depth. Oh, yeah, too thin. All right, let's try it that way. Let's just try 2. Same problem. Hooper doodles. I'm gonna make this work. All right, let's just make it a little bit smaller still. I think ultimately the issue is just the size of everything. And unfortunately, this is one of the things you run into when you're trying to play with stuff. You got to find out why it's not working. Okay, now it's just refusing. Fine. Okay, we'll just drop the. I think there's just too much going on. That would have been funny, but fine. Oh, Planty. Faces onto there. There we go. There was just too much. It was too large. So I want that to emboss, so it's pushing outward, and that's way too much. Let's just say 1 millimeter out. So now just a little bit sticking out. Hit OK. Just adding some features to it. That's pretty much it. Okay. So all around, this is a pretty simple project, but you can add quite a lot to it. So I'm going to reactivate all the things. The last step is appearance. So you need to switch back to new normal view. So Shift in, press A, bring up appearance tool. Throw whatever you want into this. You have all the options here. Sometimes you might have to end up downloading some of them. That's all. All that means is, let's see here, miscellaneous, air. I don't know what air looks like. Let's open paint. The first thing I pick, the weirdest one. All right. Now let's make metal flake. Heck yeah. If you see a little arrow next to it, just means it needs to be downloaded. All you do, select that button, you got it. Drag and drop. Let's make it green on the plant or the planter. Bam. Sweet metallic flake. Heck yeah. And oh, I don't know. Glass colored fabric. Ooh, fabric. Sure, why not? And a fabric bottom. Okay. All of those. You can actually select mirror even. Drag and drop on the bottom. The color is irrelevant to the print. This is merely for demonstration purposes, meaning that it will now look like the material you ideally would like it to look like. If you use the mirror one, do be aware that gibberiness is just reflection in the area that the original photos were taken. So the photo of the material sample was taken in like a hanger or something like that. So that's just getting the scaffolding and structure reflected in there. So there you go. Obviously, lots of colors to choose from, play around with. Advanced option, play with emboss tool, extrude, cut, whatever, making multiples within the surface, that sort. But the basic project is, jumping back in time, is making your planter and a tray across two separate components with holes for drainage. And that's pretty much it.